I have waited tables for the last 3 years. During my shift last night, a group of 4 women in their late 20s came in. They were a pleasure to have as customers. They ordered 4 of our house cocktails to start with and then went over the menu for their entrees. Then I was on my way back to their booth with the drinks on a tray. I walked by the back side and overheard one of them talking about how she was 14 weeks along. When I rounded back, they were talking about the same topic and it was clear to me that she was pregnant. I figured her having 1 drink wasn't a big deal. They ordered their entrees and I went off to handle other tables. About 5 minutes later, they called me over again and asked for another round. At this point I started getting concerned, but I took the order and cheerfully said I'd be right back. This time, I went to the bartender and asked him to make one of them a virgin cocktail. He was confused, but since he's a good friend of mine, I told him to just trust me. A few cocktails later, hers strictly virgin, they started getting rowdy, and Mrs. Pregnant Woman was also getting into it. I figured that since she didn't notice, things were okay. The problem came when I took them their check, and they asked to split the bill at the register. When Mrs. Pregnant Woman got to the counter, I saw her cocktails were marked with virgin. My bartender had edited each in the system for inventory. It was too late for me to edit them back, so I just had her pay, hoping that she wouldn't look at the receipt. They all thanked me and left, leaving a generous tip in the process. They were talking in the parking lot for the next short while, presumably waiting for an Uber. Several minutes later Mrs. Pregnant Woman came back and asked what virgin on the receipt meant. I fessed up that it meant non-alcoholic. She blank stared me for a few seconds and then asked if she had ordered a non-alcoholic cocktail. I said no, but told her that I assumed she wanted one seeing as she was pregnant. It was a lame lie and I'll admit it, but she looked me in the eye and asked me to return her part of the tip. I did so. Then she talked to my manager. My manager took me into her office and literally shrieked at me until hoarse. I stood my ground and told her that I'm not going to be responsible for FAS. She told me that she was taking me off the calendar until she decided what to do with me. She also informed me that I could get the restaurant in serious trouble for discrimination. And upon examination of my state's laws, she is correct. But when I talked to my mother and father about it tonight, they told me that they understood my position. The entire staff at the restaurant is against me and I think that I'm going to call in and tell my manager that I quit. But I still feel in the right here. My husband, Asian, and I, American, welcomed our firstborn 4 weeks ago. The baby is healthy, thank God, but I'm exhausted, haven't fixed my hair, barely able to shower and cannot sleep. My husband's family had been pressuring us to visit to meet the baby. I tried to hold them off as much as I could, but yesterday, I was surprised to find them standing on the porch. Turns out hubby invited them for dinner. I was embarrassed and felt like I wasn't ready for visitors, judgmental ones at that, cause the house was a mess, y'all. Anyways, my husband sat with them while I fed my son. Then later I asked my husband if we should order takeout for dinner. He said no, because his parents would find this rude and unwelcoming. He suggested that I go inside the kitchen and prepare something, anything long as it's homemade. I said fine, then went and made some mac and cheese. The reason I prepared this meal is because of how easy it is. Once I served the family, my husband's mom looked at me and was appalled. I noticed something was wrong. She asked if I really found it appropriate to serve her and the family mac and cheese. I asked why not, and she went on a rant about how disrespectful this was and that I clearly have no experience in what is right and wrong when it comes to hosting. I said, excuse me? Who said I signed up to host an expected visit from them? And she took it as in I didn't want them there. Her husband said they were just there to finally see the baby that I kept them from seeing for an entire month. That's a whole month of his life they missed out on. We had an argument and they decided to go home. My husband said that deciding to serve his family mac and cheese was more offensive than serving them nothing at all. I told him I was too exhausted to cook their traditional feasts, that I was forced to learn from his mom. He took offense and said that I was being mean and disrespectful towards not only his family but his culture. I went inside the bedroom to stay with my son. My husband stayed on the phone with his family for an hour, then kept giving me the cold shoulder, and refused to eat what I cook in support of his family. I understand how some guests might find it offensive, especially his family. But I was just trying to make a quick homemade meal like my husband wanted. My unmarried partner lives with me and my children who are 7, 12, and 18. He has 2 children aged 5 and 13, but they live with their mother. We've had his kids over whenever we can and I enjoy it. However, they are very different to mine, who are all mostly easygoing and respectful. And it has been just the 4 of us for most of their lives. His kids are very loud, destructive, and demanding often. We made the adjustment, and eventually they started staying over every other weekend. But his son, Spencer, has become harder to deal with over time. He'll blow up if he doesn't get his way, insult my son if he loses a game, goes into the bedrooms and takes things without asking, complains about every meal we make, expects us to buy him whatever he wants no matter cost, and generally acts like a spoiled brat. He can also be sweet, of course. He's a child and he's not evil, but this is fairly constant. We don't let it slide, but I also want to give him benefit of the doubt. He's 13, he could be acting out for lots of reasons with a weird family dynamic, I'm sure. I try my hardest to help him feel comfortable and heard //us, but his entitlement is rampant. It started to stress my kids out, and yesterday was the last straw for me. We were all about to go to the mall when my 12Y//O son asked if anyone had seen his birthday money. He had $100 saved, disappeared from his desk. Everyone, including Spencer, looked everywhere. Spencer even asked my son if he'd spent it and forgot, or if he'd left it at school, etc. Spencer then went outside to sit in the car alone and wait to leave. My partner went out to talk to him, which eventually led to getting him to empty his pockets. He had stolen the $100 to spend at the mall. My partner told him off, texted his mom about it and told me, then gave it back to my son. Quietly furious, we went out as planned after a talk with Spencer as to not ruin the day for the other kids. He didn't seem to feel guilty at all, even asked us to get him a $120 jacket while out. Once they were back at their mom's, I told my partner I don't want Spencer in the house anymore, at least for now. I do love his kids, and I don't want them to not see their dad. My partner has a house he doesn't use, so I suggested on those weekends we take the kids there for now. Then when any of mine aren't feeling it, they can go home and we can get some quality time, and so his kids don't have to share his attention as much. He thinks this is dramatic, an overreaction. I've told him I'm open to other ideas but won't budge from my stance. I don't want my kids feeling like they need to guard their space or to be uncomfortable in their own home. My youngest has autism and gets overstimulated with them around sometimes. He gets along W//5Y//O but needs breaks. My 12Y//O is quite anxious and 18Y//O has bipolar disorder. They're introverted, home is their safe haven and weekends are the only real free time they have. But I also don't want to be unfair to his kids. I am a high school math teacher, and we were creating a schedule for next year and divvying up workloads. I noticed I got almost 50% of the test creation and had 2 plannings missing from my schedule next year, for every one for the other 6 women in my department. There are 8 of us. My department head assigned herself nothing as she is managing and needs every prep. But that's another quibble. I am not the newest and in fact have seniority some of these women, but I'm also not the most experienced, so it's not like these are struggling new teachers who need help. So I asked why it was divided this way. I was told, well, Ms. Millie is pregnant and the rest of us have families. If you have to stay late, it's no big deal. I can go to my principal and deal with it that way. What they've done actually breaks the union contract. But I really was offended by this. I tried to explain my offense, and they literally stared at me gobsmacked. I actually want to know how to discuss this with them. These are all women who I have previously gotten along with and liked. When the last one, Ms. Millie, got pregnant this year, there have been some conflicts. She is in my grade level. And they made me take on some of her work basically because she had some complications. This I did, but I think planning for me to do more is very different than an emergent health issue. As well as some uncomfortable situations for me, having to participate and buy stuff for her baby shower. When I'm not really into those things, but I did so to not cause waves. A lot of people have advised go to the union, go to the principal, and I absolutely will if necessary. I want to be clear, I'm not worried at all that I'll be forced to work this schedule, but these are my colleagues. Many have been working with me 5+ years, and we have lots of meetings and times together, where it's helpful to get along. So I do try to get along, like the baby shower thing, and be a good work friend and colleague. I just want a better way to communicate myself than I had today. I was entirely shocked and very indignant and just found myself unable to express myself well, and I was hoping for ways to approach that someone with their attitude might understand, because I can't empathize with it at all. Myself and viewing the other side is how I always try to look at problem solving.